Welcome to the Rock Solid Families Podcast. I am Linda Hutchinson here with my husband. You're not wearing blue today.
I didn't know we had a dress code today.
Last time you were wearing blue, I wasn't wearing blue, so I wear blue today, and now you're wearing
Guys,
green.
do any of you have wives that want to coordinate what you wear? I don't coordinate well, but why do we have to coordinate?
No,
It's just be
I
in the
don't want to
rhythm.
clash on.
So are we clashing? Guys, email us to tell us whether we clash.
At least I'm not the woman that asks you to wear a certain thing to wear to church so that we color coordinate. I don't do that.
And all the kids are dressed the same. And I'm like,
Oh my gosh. Okay,
you know.
that has nothing
Yeah,
to do
why
with
are
what
we
we're
talking about that?
Well, we're talking about a difficult
That creates
conversation.
fear in me.
Hey, where are we talking about today?
So we do actually, hon, we've never covered this topic.
I know, but we get this question. We get this conversation.
Yeah. So we are actually going to explore and we want to do it thoughtfully because we don't want to just naysay some of the thoughts that come behind it. But we are going to talk about the fear of this world, the darkness of this world, and kind of the bottom line question is, should I bring kids into this world, into maybe this dark, evil world? You know, we watch the news at night, and it's just like you and I kind of joke now. Okay, we have a Trump story, we have a crash plane story, we have a tragedy and weather story, you know, and then we have all these others, and you got these stories that line up night after night after night. And you kind of have to look at each other like, is this really a good place to bring kids?
Yeah. We do have people that say, is it wise? I mean, are we being good stewards, faithful to bring children into a world that is filled with suffering and evil and uncertainty? And so, you know, we're really going to challenge you to kind of think outside the box. And maybe this isn't your story, but it's maybe somebody that you know. We have this walking in our door where there are young couples who are really thinking it's better off. They're followers of Christ. They're believers, and they're saying, I think we're better off to not. So what fears shape your views on having children? You know, are those fears rooted in truth or lies? And are you making decisions out of faith or fear?
Yeah.
So we're kind of talking about that specifically on the parenting realm.
Yeah. Well, we operated out of fear. When we initially wanted to have kids, we said only two kids, because we only have the two of us. We don't want to dilute our power to watch the kids. We both want to work. We don't know if we have the money to do more kids than that. And so whether we want to admit that or not, that was a Merle and Linda fearful conversation that tried to govern the way. Yeah. And so we're saying that, guys, we're admitting that because we have been in the game with you when you're thinking, oh, I just couldn't bring another kid in this world, or how would we ever cover this? Right. And I don't really think, hon, it was until we got a little deeper into our faith where we said, this is really not for us to be the sole determining factor. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. Because you're right. It's not just the uncertainty and the evil in the world. It's really, can I afford it? Right. Or can we manage it?
According to our lifestyle.
Sure. Right.
And I think that's the part that got tricky for us. We want our freedom. We want to have a certain lifestyle that we want to be able to live. And it becomes very all about us. It's very selfish in its origin. So again, we're not trying to beat people up on this. It's just a thought process that you go, how did we arrive at that place?
Yeah. So it's a very valid question. It's a very deep emotional question that a lot of couples wrestle with, a lot of moms, a lot of women deal with. And so we understand that people are wrestling with this fear and disillusionment and sorrow over the state of our country, our world today. And hun, you and I were making decisions without all of these school shootings. I mean, school shootings were rare back in our day when our kids were really young. And so the cultural decline, just the financial insecurity, even our environment, climate change, all of those things play a part in what parents are thinking, like, do we want to bring a child into this world? So that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Before we go there, let's thank our sponsors. We want to thank Maxwell Construction, Casey's Outdoor Solutions, and the Hoosier Ice House for continuing to be part of the Rock Solid Family podcast. And just the Rock Solid family, they sponsor what we do and actually participate and attend a lot of the things, events and stuff that we do. So we want to thank those guys. If you're doing any business or work with them, just let them know that you heard their name on our shows and you want to thank them. So just we also want to thank you guys for sharing shows. We do not advertise really at all. I mean, not with much intention, but it's word of mouth that brings people in our office for coaching services. And so that word of mouth is because you guys are out there talking and sharing and stuff. So we want to just thank you for that.
Yeah. And now we have 2 offices. If you've not heard, we have opened up an additional office in the Care Resource Connection in Lawrenceburg, Indiana.
I keep getting those words
I know.
out of order.
It's on Industrial Drive. And so we have an office there as well as our office in West Harrison or St. Leon, Indiana. So you have 2 different options. And really, hon, that is because our team is expanding. And so over the summer, we are rolling in 2 new coaches who are going to be getting some training and some preparation to be able to start seeing clients at the end of the summer. So we're excited to have Andy Dalton. And do we have an announcement of our new one or not?
I think she's made the announcement.
I think so, yeah. So we are excited about our new hire.
We're going to say it. And Kim Hackworth will be joining us. Kim Hackworth. So they both have quite the history in either psychology, counseling, or teaching, coaching. And they're really going to expand our wisdom base and our resources.
Yeah, we've talked about Andy before and things, and he's been on your Strong Dad show. But Kim, we've not even announced her name yet, and so we're kind of taking a leap here because she has given her notice. But she comes from the school psychology world, and she has a very deep spiritual depth to her, which I'm really excited for us to have on our team. So we're really thankful that she's willing to. And hun, she said she felt led to step into the chaos, to step into
I
this
don't really like her describing our work like that.
Well, because she kind of talked about how she could do her job with her eyes closed, and she felt like God was calling her to more.
Right.
And so really this is kind of a, she's taking some sacrifices to come on our team. So that it's not to get rich or to make a lot of money, but to really make a difference in this world. So, why are people afraid to have children today? That's a big question. And, if you think about it, Solomon writes in Ecclesiastes, meaningless. Everything is meaningless. I have seen all the things that are done under the sun, and all of them are meaningless. It's a chasing after the wind. So even in Scripture, people wrestled with the despair in our world today.
Yeah. And I also, honey, I don't think we should come across this as everything should be spontaneous, willy-nilly, just do whatever feels good in the moment, and then you'll deal with the consequences or the results of it later. I don't think we're called to do that either. We are called to be thoughtful. You don't plant the crop unless you know what you're going to do with the crop on the other end of it. And so I think it's important, as you were talking about our new hires, we've been talking about new hires for a while.
Yes.
About, what we would like to do, but we just didn't jump out and do it. We had to kind of test the market a little bit and go, okay, is now the right time? Because you don't want to set things up for failure. And so there's this balance of trusting God and listening to his direction, but also, using some wisdom based off of the earthly factors that you see. Well, how much will it cost? What do we have in our budget? These kind of things. So there is a balance that we're trying to walk here.
Yeah, but Hebrews 11:1 says that faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. So you're never going to have that guarantee that it's going to be perfect or everything's going to be fine. And so there is this tension of the unknown.
Yeah.
And so that's what's really driving a lot of decisions for parents these days of like, I just don't know if I'll still have my job, or if the world will be an evil place, or that their child is going to suffer, or there's just so much hopelessness and the responsibility. We're seeing this even with our teens and young adults, that fear of launching and that fear of the unknown of a job or driving or moving out of the house. And so now we've got parents who are now married who are having those same kind of angst and fears.
Yeah.
And it's reflecting in just their decisions of having children.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of the different things, hun, the cultural things that you can get spun up in. All right. We already mentioned some of them about everything from climate change to finances and that kind of thing. As a woman, what concerns you most about bringing kids into today's world?
I think it's the godlessness, really, that, you and I grew up in a very Christian-oriented home, neighborhood, family. And so now we've said this many times before that we are in the third generation of godlessness in our communities. And so where are our kids going to see Jesus? Like we're going to have to be the light because there's a lot of darkness around us. And so I think that's what makes me kind of cautious of just like, okay, like how does God bring life into the darkness? How does he bring light into the darkness? And so we're going to kind of talk about that. It's our children. Our children are a heritage from the Lord, and blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them, Psalm 127, 3 through 5. And so children are called a gift. They're not a burden. They're not a problem, although sometimes it feels that way, that God is using our children to bring that light we're going to be talking about.
Well, I want to go in step with you here because I think we could talk about climate and finances and violence and all those things. But I want to go back in step with what you just said there because one of the fears that I have, and we just did our grandparents show on Memorial Day, just kind of bringing them up to light and kind of remembering that we stand on their shoulders. And the next generation that is being produced right now has a lot of heavy lifting to do that we had lifted by previous generations. And what I mean by that is our parents brought us in to know Christ. Our grandparents, our neighborhoods were so much more based in that. So much of that lifting was already done. And now a lot of these kids come from zero. Yeah. And they've never really lifted their first finger in terms of understanding the faith. So I think one of the concerns is like, okay, even if I raise my child up in a Christian way and he walks out of our house and he's bombarded with everything that's against it. You and I were not bombarded by all of this. We were it was supported. And so now they walk out of your house and they see all this stuff that's, kind of the anti-way of Christ. Yeah. That's some pretty heavy lifting. And so I think that is definitely one of my bigger concerns. All the more reason why starting your kids out young, you're going to have to really fortify their camp, whether it is private schools, whether it is homeschooling, whether it is, all these different things that you go, we got to make sure our kids are really built up well to handle what's getting ready to come their way.
It is hard because then some people say, well, then you take the light out of the public school. And so it gets so dark. And so, I am blessed to have several clients who are young adults who on their own, they have made their own spiritual path. Yeah. Their parents, they didn't see it modeled. It was at the invitation of a classmate or a friend or a teammate that got them in the door. But then they have drove themselves. They have learned themselves. They have connected. Some of them are paying for faith-based coaching because they know they need it. Yeah. And it blows my mind. I'm like, okay, at age 20, would I have been able to do that? Would I have been aware enough to know what I needed? And so I'm really proud of them, of just really stepping up. Hun, I was looking up Philippians 2. It says, do everything without grumbling or arguing. This is verse 14. And then 15 says, so that you may become blameless and pure, children of God without fault in a warped and crooked generation. Then you will shine among them like stars in the sky as you hold firmly to the word of life. And then I will be able to boast on the day of Christ that I did not run or labor in vain. And I just crazy, like, okay, he wants us to shine in a warped and crooked generation. He wants us to be that light in the darkness. Man, that's good stuff.
Yeah. Well, again, I think it goes back to that idea of, okay, so we're talking about we should so let's maybe drill this down a little bit. So should we have kids, right? And if if we're at all trying to be faithful, we have to go back to Genesis 1:28, where one of our commands is to be fruitful and multiply. And so from the very beginning, that's how we keep the population going. For us to get way out in front of ourselves, our intellect can worry about every possible problem that can come around. But as you're talking there, it's like, no, these kids are going to be, some of them are not, right? Some of them are not going to be the light. Some of them are going to fall into the darkness. But we have our friend Frank who says, these kids are our future leaders
of our nation.
And so your next president is there. Your next inventor of some great thing. Your next medical researcher, like whatever. They are also in that group. And to handicap that by saying there's no hope, there's nothing that's going to pull us through, is really us being hopeless.
Yeah. We are pro-life. We fight for the right of the unborn. And I've heard different people say, could the cure of cancer been with that person who never had a chance to live?
Yeah.
And so it's like there could be so much light that we provide. We can raise our children to reflect light, not just survive in the darkness.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So, guys, we are called to walk in strength and spirit. We are called to have the courage, the bravery, in 2 Timothy 1:7, for God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and sound mind. And so, we are not to be that timid person. That doesn't mean we know exactly what we're doing, but the courage is not being fearless. Courage is having fear and working in spite of that, right? And so I'm still going to step into this and trusting that things are going to work out. And so I think that's what we're really called to do. Us not doing that. Like, guys, this goes back to everything from us saying, I want to predict the type of kids. At some point in time, am I going to be able to say, I want a boy?
Blue-haired or blue-haired, blue-eyed, blonde-haired boy.
Yeah. I found out that my child in the womb has Down syndrome, so I'm going to abort that kid because I don't want a child with Down syndrome, And so these are the things, guys, that we are called to put the brakes on because, speaking of Down syndrome, we know quite a few kids with Down syndrome. And it doesn't mean that child doesn't bring challenges. I mean, our other kids bring plenty of challenges in, but every one of those parents will tell you, oh, I don't know what we would do without them. They bring joy into our life.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that every situation is, but sometimes it's even a matter of, well, maybe that child that comes into your life, and maybe they're suffering, maybe they have a terminal disease, or maybe they have some kind of handicap. Well, maybe what is the refinement doing to you as a person? Maybe this is as much about you being refined as a person to say, man, this really humbled me. Prior to this child, I was kind of arrogant or proud. It reminds me of my old swim coach, Brent Rudemiller. And Brent has passed away after an unbelievable fight with cancer. But I've said this before, and I'm not saying this in a bashing way. He was just a very, very aware and proud and strong, and maybe sometimes even arrogant young man. And then God gave him two boys that were severely handicapped. Yeah. And at first, he battled that. He talks about how difficult that was because 24/7 they were taking care of these kids, and his life just was definitely interrupted from the way he thought it should go. And coming through that in his later part of his life, as these boys began to grow and they began to figure out how to raise their new family, he says it was one of the greatest gifts God ever gave him. Because it humbled him to be the person that he needed to be. So you wouldn't see that on the front side of that, right? If you were to just look at the story and, you're going to have two boys like this, you would have run from that.
Yeah. Yeah, Jesus reminded us that in this world we will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world, he said. And so God doesn't promise us easy life, but he does promise us his presence and his power. I listen to Christian radio all the time, and one of the DJs around Mother's Day was saying about the love of a mother and just how precious that is and how we would die for our children and sacrifice for our children. And then she said, imagine your heavenly Father, who it doesn't even compare his love for you. So think about how you love your children, and then a heavenly Father whose love is exponentially greater than that. And so would he ever do anything to hurt us or to make life, if he makes life difficult or he allows life to be difficult, it's got an eternal divine purpose. And so we're going to trust him that if he gives us a special needs child or he doesn't let us have children, that he is doing this as part of his love for us and his work in our life. And so we just got to trust him. And it's easier said than done. But I love 2 Timothy 1:7, where it says that he doesn't give us a spirit of fear. I love that he gives us power, love, and a sound mind. And so when we focus on who God is and what he's doing in our life and let him lead the way and surrender our way for his way, it is where we find our peace.
Yeah, I think the humble heart is where we're coming to with this. The idea that I'm recognizing now that I'm not in control, and being able to ask the question, God, what do I need to learn here? What do I need to pull out of this? And so whether it's to have another child or whatever, when you wanted to adopt and I didn't want to adopt, and this was long before adoption really came into our
10
life.
10 years, yeah.
That was definitely laid on your heart. I didn't understand it, didn't want to understand it. And so there was a hardening of the heart, and that's the risk that we run here, guys, that when we harden ourselves, no, we're doing 2 kids, that's all we're doing, and you harden your ideas because you don't want them to be changed, because that's the way you have control. And that's a scary place when you harden your heart, because that means, God allows that. And then he allows you to be who you're going to be then.
Yeah.
And so your heart was softened. Mine was not. Thankfully, I had just enough softness left in my heart that it was able to be malleable when the opportunity arose.
So I'm going to give credit to, our local church that we were involved in at the time had something annually called Orphan Sunday.
Yeah.
And I'm just telling you, that is what kind of put that conversation in front of us year after year, because they would talk about big brothers, big sisters, and sponsoring a child overseas, and foster to adopt, and being a guardian ad litem, and stepping in the space for a child in need. And so I remember 2 or 3 years in a row, you and I having this conversation, and I'll never forget that 3rd year laying in bed, and you said, "Oh, I don't know, maybe God's doing something." And I was like, "You say there's a chance." Like, it was the first time that you had ever even opened the idea of adoption. And so I knew God was working in your heart, but I knew that I could not push that on you. I was trying to do my timing, not his. How did I know we were going to be empty nesters in our 50s by the time we adopted 3 children? Holy cow. But we trusted the Lord, right?
And the ways of the Lord do not, frequently, they do not make sense to this world that we call logical. And so that's, I think, our test. It doesn't make sense. So much, we had a discussion the other day in our men's group about grace. And grace does not make sense. Grace means essentially you're not getting what you deserve, and so the whole walk with Christ on many levels does not make sense. And that's the reason why we should lean into it, because there's a blessing on the end of that. So I think, one of the things, hon, if you remember when we were getting ready to adopt, man, I wrestled that. You remember we had 6 months of kind of this probationary period where the kids could be in our house, and you can kind of refine your decision. Do you really want to do this? And I remember the wrestling in my mind going on. And then finally, just it all kind of came out, and I was upset. I was at church. I was crying. The emotions got the best of me.
I don't know what song it was, but you and I were both in tears.
Yeah, and we walked out, and here's where I finally got to. I said, we're doing this. Mm-hmm. And so the point here is when you finally surrender your way, guys, when you finally surrender your way, you're going to get something called peace. Mm-hmm. That does not mean you're going to have full understanding. It does not mean you're going to know what's going to happen, but you're going to have peace in knowing this is what we're going to do. Yeah. And I'm no longer in that fight. And that was, that was really a great time because the second guessing stopped.
Great time. That was a torturous summer. Actually, it was 10 years ago this summer.
Yeah.
We were wrestling because you, at the end of the school year, had heard that they were going to be up for adoption. And I was taking a new job and I was not ready to make another life change.
Well, what's funny, guys, is when I then brought up the idea, Linda was backpedaling for a while, like, oh my gosh, no, I've got a new job. Like, you start to throw in all of your logical reasons as to why it might not be a good time. And so I think God does that to humble us to say, not your way, but mine. Yeah. And so, again, as we start to kind of wind things down, let's be very careful about the world determining how we should live our life. Because the world will create a very plastic, false world of what comfort looks like, how our lifestyle should be, what safe is. And that oftentimes could push the adventures of Christ right out the window. And I think that's a right word to use too, because living a Christian life is an adventure.
Yes. And parenting is really missionary work. Our first mission field is right in our own home. And so we've got to really look at it. Are we creating a next generation that knows him? Are we living out Deuteronomy chapter 6, where it talks about how as you walk along the road and as you talk with your children, like that, are they going to know him? And so we have a question that we just kind of want you to think about as we close. How might God want to use future generations to redeem the brokenness in our world today? Like, what could he be doing with your children or the children that you will have or they will have? What could God do in those future generations? That's a crazy thought to think about, but to trust him in that, right? Yeah. That he might have that cure for cancer in your family.
We have recognized in this country, and the statistics will back it up, is that even though we see in the adult world many people kind of fading away from faith, there's a resurgence among the youth, the 20s and unders, who are saying, because they've been raised in a chaotic home.
Right. They're like, right? There's got to be something more.
Yeah, and they're seeing maybe a friend has a level of faith and they're attracted to it. And so you're seeing young kids bringing their family to church because they're looking for some of that peace.
Yeah.
And so I think there are some great things coming. I think there is a level of this revival coming. We're seeing it in lots of different types of churches. So I think that's kind of interesting.
I do want to challenge the parents who are listening, because I don't think there's many teens and 20s in listening.
I think we have closet teen
but
listeners.
If you're a parent who's kind of fallen off the wagon, who's kind of just gone through the motions and really have kind of strayed from your faith, I really would encourage you to kind of have that revival, to kind of hit that reset button, because it is the greatest gift you can give your children. We don't bring children into this world because the world is good. We bring children into this world because God is good. And are you teaching your children about a good father who loves them, who created them on purpose for a purpose? Do they know what their purpose is? Do they know who their creator is? And if you're not leading the way, if you're not modeling that, then you are literally just perpetuating this hopelessness, this brokenness, this evil, this despair that really our world is experiencing today. It's starting in our homes. And so you can have that revival, that resurgence of hope. And man, that is one of the greatest gifts you can give your children.
Yeah, I love Isaiah 60, verse 1. Arise, shine, for your light has come. Darkness covers the earth, but the Lord rises upon you. And so don't take out the Christ factor. Yeah. Christ can make beautiful stories, right? He can make He can turn our mess into
a message.
A message.
Beauty out of ashes in Isaiah as well.
Yeah. And so, guys, I think our bottom line on this is let's start leaning a little bit more on our faith in Christ to carry us through what we might see as difficult times. I would also challenge us to not get into the naysaying of everything's gloomy, everything's bad. You called me out on that this morning.
You were a grouch this morning. Everything was going wrong.
Everything was going wrong. My body was hurting.
You sound like Eeyore.
And you said, what did you say? You called me out like, is there anything else wrong with you or something? And so we can fall into that, right? We can fall into things just don't seem to be going the way I want them to go. And I think it's important that we call ourselves out on that, as well as calling out our family members to say, no, we're made for much greater than this.
Yeah. So please, if this is kind of hit a nerve, and this is work that you need to do, reach out to us. We would love to walk alongside you. We really try to work the whole perspective of mind, body, and spirit. We believe they're all interconnected. They all help fuel the engine that moves forward. And so if you're feeling like you're stuck or you're feeling that despair, then please don't just bleed out on your children. There's a phrase I've been using a lot lately. If you don't figure out what hurt you, you'll bleed on people who didn't cut you. And so maybe you're bleeding out on people and just kind of that negative Ned or Nelly kind of, and you're really needing to do your own work. And so that's where we can come in. So if we can help you, please reach out to rocksolidfamilies.org, or you can call our office at 812-576-ROCK. That's 812-576-7625.
All right. So, guys, we are challenging you to go out and walk in boldness. So, Rock Solid Families, once again, continue to thank our sponsors. We want to thank Maxwell Construction, Casey's Outdoor Solutions, and the Hoosier Ice House. Mine, you got anything else?
No. Thank you so much for listening to the Rock Solid Families podcast, building a stronger community, one family at a time. Make it a great day.
Wants to thank Casey's Outdoor Solutions for sponsoring the Rock Solid Families podcast. Casey's has grown to be one of the largest and most unique garden centers and gift shops in the Cincinnati tri-state area. Whether you are looking to take on that next landscape project or simply add a little home decor to your house, Casey's has you covered. Located at 21481 State Line Road, Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Call them today at 812-537-3800. Let Casey's help you add beauty to your home. Rock Solid Families wants to thank Maxwell Construction for sponsoring the Rock Solid Families podcast. For over 30 years, Maxwell Construction has been a leader in turning dreams into realities, building schools, banks, restaurants, and many other commercial and public facilities. Maxwell Construction has made it their priority to not just build buildings, but to build into their community. So if you have any construction needs, call them at 812-537-2200.
Rock Solid Families would like to thank Hoosier Ice House for being a proud sponsor of the Rock Solid Families podcast. In the heart of historic Lawrenceburg, Indiana, the Ice House is at the corner of Vine and High Streets. The historic building evokes a feeling of comfort with spacious indoor and outdoor dining, a large bar, and comfortable dining areas. Large enough to host parties, yet intimate enough to feel like your favorite neighborhood restaurant. So thank you again for the Hoosier Ice House for sponsoring the Rock Solid Families podcast.